Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be around the world. I am Marcus Holmes, HR Passion Guy, and I wanted to just come on and thank you for the opportunity to share information with you. Thanks for stopping by, whether you are on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitch TV, on Facebook, on Love and Stuff. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you here. And come on in and enjoy the information that I hope you will find useful. HR Passion LLC is more about. My passion is people, and I promise to bring you passionate topics, people, their intersection, and passionate stories. And today I thought I would just share with you another passion moment, a personal passion moment around sharing information with a new cohort of Perscolas, which you may be familiar with, is really taking a lead as an organization in bringing to the tech space not only diversity, but opportunity for many people from many different walks of life to have viable opportunities and careers in the tech space. So I just want to look across platforms, make sure I am in touch with you wherever you are. All right. And share some information with you. All right. And if you would be so kind, as we always ask, to drop in the comments, where are you? And what is the temperature like where you are? Well, it is almost 50 degrees here in Detroit. I will not complain because I'm around to feel it. But I was hoping for an Indian summer here in the Metro Detroit area on the northwest side of Detroit. Very brisk morning. I was tempted to turn the heat on, but I have very deep beliefs about the heat. And so I haven't. Drop in the comments, where are you? And what is the temperature like there wherever you are? All right. And so I had an opportunity earlier to share with the next cohort of, IT professionals who are making a foray into the industry, and they are, as it were, bright eyed and bushy tail, is the saying that we often use. And that's part of the excitement of my 24 years in human resources, 17 with the city, is to see candidates and new employees excited about this new opportunity that they're embarking upon. And so for many of you, COVID may have required some pivoting and shifting. And so here is an opportunity for you to take a look, maybe a little bit more in depth in your preparation for interviews so that you might uh, get the position that you're looking for. A lot of companies just go based on an interview, which means you have one shot at the job. Some companies are savvy, I believe, enough to have more than one subject for which they are assessing you. So some companies, of course, review your resume. And some companies do an in-depth verification and look at your training, experience, and personal qualifications. Some companies have you do a demonstration. I was talking with a company in Chicago about their process, and they have a demonstration that involves a CAD and drawing component. Some companies have writing as a bit part of the work responsibility. They will have writing samples. And so I encourage employers, hiring managers to not be one dimensional, but be multidimensional in that you have different ways that you're assessing the candidates, and then you ascribe a certain value or weight to that. We call it in the city subjects, and will be weighted more heavily in the final composite score, if you will, for an individual to make the short list or offer list or however it is that your company does it. So I thought, what a great opportunity for me to then, looks like I'm spooling a little bit. Want to make sure I'm okay. Good afternoon. I see some folks on Facebook. Thank you, Rashida T. Marie, for joining us. Want to make sure it looks like we are having a little, okay, looks like we're still connected. Just look at one platform. It doesn't seem to be as connected. No business like show business. We're live. And just checking. Yep, looks like it's good. All right. Just looks like on one platform I was fooling. And so I thought I would share some of the information with you. Some of the information is kind of a lesson, if you will. But some of the information I hope that you will take and that you will make it your own and doing a specific style of interviewing and maybe acclimate yourself better to it. And that's this behavior-based interviewing, behavior-based interviewing. And I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about it. But have you ever had an interview where someone says, tell me about yourself? Give me some likes wherever you are, or loves, or comments, drop in the comments. Yes, that's me. Or they said, tell me about a time. And then ... they finish that. Or from your work history, can you describe a time when? Give me some likes or something. I'm trying to look across platforms. If you drop it in the comments, it should show up in my restream, or some likes. Okay. Tell me about a time, right? That is that potential employer, right? They're an employer, but they're potentially your employer. That is their foray into this behavior-based interviewing, okay? It's a structured interview, as many of you may know, and it's designed to assess whether or not you possess the behaviors or competencies that will be needed for your success in that organization, within that organization. And so in general, there are 12 types of competencies. And I will show a little bit of that with the PowerPoint. And you don't have to know all of the 12 competencies, but you should always know a forward-thinking recruiter, hiring manager, and company is not hiring for today exclusively. They're hiring for tomorrow. So they're also looking to see if you have some behavioral indicators that align with future competencies, or ones that might make you trainable, learnable for future competencies. And so there might be some leadership competencies that they look for early that might not be necessarily, some might not consider them useful in the entry-level position, but they will be useful down the road. And so this inventory of questions, this arsenal of questions, right, that they're going to ask, that you feel like it's the Great Spanish Inquisition, this is so that they can determine your future mobility within the organization as well. Robert Guyton, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I hope you will click share on the LinkedIn platform and have others join us as well. And I hope those of you that are joining will just say where you are from, what city you live in, and what the temperature is like there, just so that I know you're here and are tracking with us, so we can get your comments in the feed. That way I can see that you're here. I'm broadcasting on a number of platforms, so I'm trying to see all of your comments, because all of your comments matter on this Passion Friday. And so this behavior-based interviewing is a way for people to see if you have, based on what you've done in the past, whether it predicts that you will behave in the same way if they hire you. And so that's the whole notion behind this behavior-based interviewing, largely in summation. And so I'm going to share my screen so that I can share with you a little bit of what I shared with Perscolas today. I think it will be helpful for some of you. Marcus Holmes, of course, if you follow my page, you know that I'm certified in both HR organization, 2 of the HR organizations, there are more, and very proud to hold my SHRM certification as well as my HRCI of equal value to me. So I know there are arguments of which one is of more value. Both of them are of value to me. That's why I have both of them. All right. And so All right, let's see if we can get the screen to move for us. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the competency defined, right? So when you think of competency, some people think of ability or capability. And normally those two mean that you're able to do something or you've got the capacity to do something. Competency is more about your expertise and experience in your behaviors of doing something. So it can be thought of as the state of or quality of being a well-qualified person to perform a task or a group of tasks. You can gain more competencies through education, training, experience, and natural abilities. You can also learn them, but it's not possible simply to teach or measure them, is what Seema Sanghai says in his book, The Handbook of Competency Mapping. So I'll give you what I call the clinical definition. S.B. Perry says this in his Quest for Competency. It's a cluster or related knowledge, skills, and attitudes that reflects a major portion of job performance of one's job. It correlates with performance on the job. It can be measured with a well-accepted standard, and it can be improved through training and development. And so there are many definitions for competency, and some of them broad, some of them a lot more narrow than what I've given you as the clinical one. You can drop in the comments if you feel that there are more clinical, more specific ones that you like to share. I love it. But two elements are common among them. They're observable and measurable, and there must be a distinguishing the knowledge and skills between superior or exemplary performers and other performers. And so just tell you a little bit about the origins. David McClellan is thought to be one of the original users of competencies. His methodology argued that intelligence tests weren't valid predictors of intelligence, and they were irrelevant to the workforce. So we had this groundbreaking article in 1973, out of which a number of organizations, including the US government, the State Department in particular, and the US Navy, both hired him to improve their selection process. And what he did was he developed competencies for each of the positions by interviewing superior performers who already held those positions, and then aligning their behavior indicators to competencies. And so that is where this work largely started. And so organizations often develop some purchase and inventory bank of questions, but the validation, the proof that's in the pudding, is when you do your interviews of incumbents. And my recommendation is slightly different than what McClellan does. I think you interview the superior performers. I think you interview the meets expectations or middle of the road performers, if you will, and the low performers. And I think you synthesize that information to see your behavioral anchors so that you will see at different graduations, different levels, if you will, where behaviors bring greater success on the job. It should give you some insights about how you design the questions and the responses so that you understand. You might take someone who doesn't have a strong competency in a specific area, but he answers in a way, or the answer is similar, that leads you that he will be able to build, or she will be able to build to a certain level. So you build in your process kind of a cross section, if you will, of people that you interview who are incumbents to validate whether or not the questions are relevant. There are things that a low performer might share with you that a high performer may not. And so you want to look at the behavioral indicators that are going to lead for success on the job. That's my thinking. Of course, I'm not David McClellan, but I had to share that with you. And I'm just going to just take a quick look at the comments, because again, I'm looking at on both platforms just to see. All right. All right, thank you. And just checking my LinkedIn platform, because if you don't drop in the comments, I don't know that you're here to participate. All right, I mean, here to comment, tracking with me. And so I want to spend most of the next few minutes talking about these competency characteristics. There are 5 of them: motives, traits, self-concept, knowledge, and skills. And Spencer and Spencer in 1983 talks about these underlying characteristics, whereas the first three are invisible, right? You can't see someone's motives. You can't really see their traits, even though you see their traits played out through behaviors, right? You can't see their self-concept, but you can see their knowledge as they demonstrate it through skills or as they talk about it. You can learn those things. Those are more visible, if you will. And so this competency characteristics it helps us to be able to both monitor and measure all of these parts of the competency. And we'll talk about how these might be useful when you are preparing as the candidate to draft and craft your responses, okay? And so tracking with me, just make sure you heard motives, traits, self-concept, knowledge, and skills. I'm going to talk a little bit about motives. As McClellan writes, in the context of a job, core motives are essentially three: achievement, affiliation, and power. And I would describe achievement as a person who likes to face a challenge, is driven by challenges, is driven by achieving things, goals set before him or her. Give me a like, a love, a nod if you are a person that's driven by achievement. You like a challenge. You like to be able to say, I met that challenge and I was able to accomplish it. Okay? That is the motive achievement. Affiliation is that drive to relate to people. You like relationships. You like belonging to an organization. You like being part of something, being part of a team. You like interpersonal interaction. You like socializing. You like to be connected to people. Give me a like or love if that's you. You're driven by relating with and to people. Okay? And then power. You like to widen your influence. You like to be in charge. You like the status. You like the authority. And you like to use that in our example for good, right? We know there are people that have power and authority that don't use them for good. But in the context of a job, you like to use your power. You feel driven to widen your area of influence so that you can make a bigger impact. Give me some likes or loves if that's you. You like to do that. Okay. And we'll talk about traits. Give you some examples of traits. It's an individual's behaviors, right? It's an aspect of your personality that is reasonably a characteristic of the person. So grit, someone who has a strong resolve, right? You're going to do it and keep at it. You're going to be resilient. You're going to keep at it. You got grit. You don't give up. Give me a like if that's you. Curiosity, pretty self-explanatory. You like to uncover things. You like to find out. Some may call it nosy, but you are curious about how things work and how parts come together. You like to investigate and research, okay? Self-control. You have control, you're measured, you're poised under pressure. You have control about how you respond to things, self-control. Social intelligence. You can read the temperature in the room. You know how to read different personalities. You know how to not make strangers and come into a situation and be able to navigate that situation socially very well. Give me some likes if any of that resonates. Zest. One of my favorites. You have an enthusiasm that doesn't need a cup of Joe. I have a cup of Joe right near me and I need it. But you have enthusiasm, you have the spark, you have this energy about you, and it's just naturally, it just emanates from you from morning to night. Optimism. You know, people talk about the glass half full, half empty, but really you look at the outlook of things, that things are going to be okay. You're always in any situation looking for that silver lining. You're looking for the best in anything. Give me a like or a love if that's you. And then gratitude, which was one of my favorites. You, at your center, are grateful and thankful for the things in life, and those things inspire you to be more positive and to have more positive interactions with others. Okay? Give me some likes if any of those resonate with you. Those are traits that we want to find out about in a competency. They're characteristics. Self-concept, and it's an important one. It's a collection of your beliefs about you. And the more positive, according to psychologist Carl Rogers, your self-concept is, the greater your traction on performance, right? And that makes sense, right? The more you feel about your ability to do something or who you are in doing something, the better you will be at it, the more you will put to it, the more care and custody you will have for it, right? And I always want to invite people to think of this self-concept in the scheme of the greater world, right? Because we are informed about who we are based on our comparison to others in the world, right? And so we see ourselves as African American, maybe, or we see ourselves as Asian, or we see ourselves as Caucasian, or we see ourselves as man or woman. And we ascribe value and meaning to those things based on what those things mean, or our perception of what they mean in the greater world. And so the goal for your self-concept as a competency is to make it more positive, that your reflection of yourself, your knowledge, skills, and abilities are positive and great. And the more that they are positive, the greater your chances are of rocking an interview, rocking a position, learning a new task, or learning a new concept and applying it successfully. And then knowledge is self-explanatory. It's the content that you've consumed that you know, that you have some working knowledge of, right? You've gained it through education, you've gained it through experience. The example that I list is for a salesperson or even a social media manager. Market knowledge might be a good knowledge to have, that you've consumed some content through education or experience around how markets bear out and what market share is and how to market, right? Skill. It's when you take that knowledge and apply it, right? It's like the theory and the practice. Okay, now you have consumed some content. Over time, as you consistently apply it, you develop a skill and a working knowledge in that skill, and hopefully a mastery of that skill, okay? These 5 things I think are pretty important for you to know, not because you need to know what competencies are. That's not the reason I want you to know that, or that you need to know all of these 12 types of competencies. But this behavior-based interviewing is going to require you to demonstrate your behavioral indicators. How you behave in the past is widely believed is how you will behave in the future. And so this whole process is about, right, gauging how have you behaved in the past. And so an example of a competency that I gave this morning that I will share with you is decision making. Now for simplistic purposes, just decision making is the competency, right? People have pretty broad competencies, elongated competencies. I'm trying to find a great way to say it. And some of them are filled with more terms than meat. I think I achieved it. So this competency, for example, it might include the following behavioral indicators: dealing with difficult decisions, an ability to connect information together in order to diagnose a problem, determining root causes to fully resolve issues, being sensitive to the needs of others when dealing with divisive issues, commits to a course of action, can make decisions quickly when necessary, and seeks the correct answer and understands what that impact of that answer or decision might be on other organization issues. And so I am going to stop there for a second before I get into some sample questions, because I want to just, it's right there, talk about this prep for the interview in light of some of the information that I provided. And so one of the more popularized styles of delivering a response in a behavior-based interview is the STAR method. It's also known as the CAR method. It's a couple of different acronyms, really get you to the same thing, but we'll use the STAR method for today. And it is the situation, the task, the action, and the results. So in a behavior-based interview, which is a structured interview, you're going to be asked an open-ended question, kind of like I said at the outset. Tell me about a time when. And in our practice one, it's tell me about a recent decision you had to make in which there was little or no time to seek additional information. Okay, so that's the behavioral question that we're using to find out about your behavioral indicators for decision making. Okay, and what you're going to do as the interviewee is you're going to tell a really great story, right? And you're going to tell that story in about 3 to 5 minutes, hopefully closer to 3, but 3 to 5 minutes, that is related to this behavioral indicator. Now, a few things that I would suggest that you do in developing your responses before we get into the meat of the STAR is to study the job description. And so most people do their homework pretty well in that you apply for the position, you check out the company's website, if there's pay information, you check out the pay information. You may make sure you meet the bullet points of minimum requirements. We call them at the city minimum interest requirements. And you will apply. I will say, 70, if you have 70% of those qualifications, including any licensing or licensure or certifications, apply, right? So you've applied for the position. You've created your account on their system because many of the organizations require you to create an account now. You're all set waiting for the interview, but there's some prep that you can still do. And many of you, you're on LinkedIn. You have a LinkedIn profile and page, right? And you have made it so in your settings that notifications can come to you about positions and opportunities. But what you also want to do is you want to network on LinkedIn by connecting, following that organization, and connecting to individuals within that organization who work in the area or who work for the company that you are desiring to work for. You want to make sure you do that. Send them a connection invite and say, hey, I see you work at this company. It looks like a great place to work. I'd love to connect to you on my journey of trying to gain X and so position. Don't ask anything else. Don't ask, who should I talk to? Who should I know? My suggestion is don't ask that information. Just connect to them. If you have the time, once or twice a week, don't troll or stalk, but comment on any post that they have and comment. Don't just say here, amen, yes, but put some insightful commentary about the industry or the actual post, okay? Include that information. Then you might check Glassdoor to see what the reviews are, right? You definitely are going to look at them across other social media channels, right? And see what information you can learn about the culture of the organization. If you were to ask questions of some of those people you were connected to, I'd say relegate those questions only to questions about the culture. What is it like working there? What's the best thing about working there? What's your favorite perk working there? And gather all that information. When you're on the website, typically the posting has some facts about the job, but it isn't always the job description or job specification in its entirety. So click on the link where it says here, see the whole job description, download that and study that job description. More modern job descriptions are going to talk about the competencies that are going to be needed. Some will not, okay? But you want to study those job descriptions to get a sense of the types of behaviors that they're looking for, the types of knowledge, the types of skills, the self-concept. You're going to look for all of that in there. And then you're going to, for each job, and some of these will cross, you're going to do 5 to 7 examples of projects or accomplishments that you've had so that you can craft some responses. Revisit any previous job performance reviews. You know, that copy of your job performance review that you kept, keep it and take out some of the things where you got kudos or things that you got commendations or areas where you exceeded expectation. You want to use those also as material for crafting your responses. Make a list of all of your professional accomplishments. If it's promotion, if it's you save the company 20%, if you increase their market share by 3%, whatever it is that you feel as your professional accomplishment, make yourself a list. And then this is the part that I want to pick back up from what we talked about earlier. You want to revisit motives, traits, self-concept, knowledge, and skill to develop your responses, okay? Really important to do that. So for the situation, tell me about a recent decision you've had to make in which there was little or no time to seek additional information. You're going to describe the situation in which the event took place, but my recommendation for you is to take the motive, your motive, see if it aligns with the core competencies that you saw on the job site. See if it aligns with the core values. So for instance, if your motive is achievement, the way you might open your response to this when they say, tell me about a recent decision you had to make, you say, I love a challenge. I love to have to make a decision in a split second and having to gather information. That gets my endorphins going. That gets my adrenaline flowing. I absolutely love a challenge of solving a problem through making a decision. And here's the time that I worked at ABC company when I did it. You're starting to craft a story, and the interviewers, you're drawing them in. It's your hook. Your motive reveals your authentic self, and people really do want to know beyond your professional self who you are at your core. And while you may envelop, your life may envelop all three of these motives, one of them is going to be predominantly one that reflects who you are. You might be a person who is driven by achievement, is driven at times by affiliation, is driven at times by power, but one of those three is going to stand out more than the others. And that's how you want to open that question. You want to open it by saying, you know, I love to take care of my people. So it's important to me that if I make a decision with little or no time, I got to think ahead on how it's going to impact my team because relationships are important to me. That's revealing that your motive for operating in a job is to relate to people, and you're always considering people. So you use that part of the competency to frame your opening, to draw in your interviewers to say, this is just who I am. Okay. Same with power. If you say, I love to take charge, I love to make decisions. And you know what? I find so many times that people don't want to step up and make decisions because they're afraid to make mistakes. But I think it takes some grit to get in there and stick to it, even if you haven't made the right decision, to make a decision and pivot and be able to be adaptable, to be able to make the decision that maybe wasn't the best into a better decision. And when I worked at JYC company, that's exactly what I did about 3 years ago. I also want to mention here that a recent decision should be 3 years or less. Now, a recent decision isn't if you're, you know, in your mid-20s when you decided who you were taking to the prom, take my girlfriend or my ex-girlfriend. That's an important decision in that time. Maybe not the best example for this section, and certainly not the most recent decision. You want a recent decision, right? I decided to buy a car or go to law school. Might be a big decision for you, but you want a recent decision that's going to have a little bit more impact, maybe, and one that's going to reflect your motives and align to the core values of that organization, okay? So you're going to describe the situation in which the event took place. It's important to let people know when, where, who, right? You want to let them know when, where, and who, and you want to make sure that you put yourself in the center of that situation. Okay, so you had to make a recent decision to a change in policy happened midstream a contract, and you had to make a recent decision to extend the former contracts, the benefits and opportunities of the former contract to a customer, even though the policy was changing. And you had to make a decision to do that or not to do it. And you had little time, little information. Customer called in and say, "I need this." The policy change had not been communicated yet. You had to make a split-second decision. What did you do? What was involved? That's just an example. Okay. The task. So what did you do? What were you asked to do? What were you asked to complete? Right? Or what challenge arose? And there, what challenge arose is when you start to talk about your traits. I was determined to ensure that we did not lose this customer because we failed to communicate to the customer our policy change. Their ask of us, their request for service was before we disseminated the information. And I believe in sticking things out till the end. So I walked that customer through. Now I'm getting into the action. I walked that customer through how it could be a win-win to stay our customer. Even though I wasn't able to give them the full thing they requested, I was able to do this. And tell us what exactly were the actions that you took. And many people think because you're on a team, we want to know what the team did. No, an interviewer or hiring manager in a behavioral-based instance wants to know what you did. I'm going to drop to the comments. I'm trying to double back. Thank you so much. I like to make impacts, but don't necessarily need the power. All right, very good. You are living your purpose. Thanks for this information. Oh, Jamie Ringgold, you're just my favorite. I love you. Can I share this info? Mark? It's so valuable. Absolutely. I have a PowerPoint that I shared with Perscolis this morning. It's a brand new cohort who's going through, they are going through this tech space. I see Monique Ellis. She's one of my favorite tech people in the world. She always makes sure I have everything I need. Talk about stellar customer service. Thank you so much. All of these great people. I'm sorry I was missing you in the comments. I was trying to navigate the PowerPoint. I live for the comments. That's why I said that. Good morning, Andrea. You're in New York. It's 54 degrees. Somebody send us some warm weather, please. I need an Indian summer. But I will send the PowerPoint, Jamie, that I'm talking through. Dr. Jermaine Sledge, who works with Perscolis, has a cohort of a cross-section, great cross-section of people who are foraying into the technology space as a career opportunity. And so I'm having these discussions with him, and he invited me to come in and present to them this morning about behavior-based interviewing. And so I think I gave them a lot more theory than they wanted. I told them just take a swig of the coffee. But and some of this is helpful for people because a lot of organizations are moving, Jamie, to more behavior-based interviewing as the entire assessment. So they're just doing one assessment. That's not my recommendation to organizations. They should have multiple because there could be bias in any of those assessments. So you want to watch out for bias, and you want to be multidimensional so you see all facets of an individual that you might not get in a behavior-based interview. But this is not only the growing trend, this is commonplace that people are doing behavior-based interviewing. So I'd be happy to share the information with you. I'll email it to you if you'd like to have that. So you can just shoot me. I can get your email. And so I'm going to double back to the STAR method. I talked about the actions that you took. So even if you're on a team, if it's groupthink, because groupthink in process could be collaboration, could be a competency. But what we're looking for is what role did you take on the team, right? Not just that you're easy to work with, that you can work on a team, and there are questions that are geared toward that, but what are the actions that you took and what was the role that you took on the team? Here for me is where you really, really shine. You're telling a story still, But here's when you bring in your own gravitas. Here's where you bring in your own differentiator, whatever that is. And I have to tell you, two of those components, characteristics of the competency I think that are important here are the traits. Okay. Very important to bring in any traits that would be relevant to this action, and your self-concept. You have to bring to this action what is individually yours that you feel sure of, confident of, proud of. And when you are confident, not overconfident, not arrogant, not egotistical, but when you are confident, your confidence puts others that are first meeting you at ease. And that is what you want to do in a story. You want to put people at ease with your confidence. Okay? Then with the results, you want people to be able to recognize your results as impactful. So is it 2% that you reduce the cost of a process, or 2 hours that you shaved off a process a week, and what the value is to the organization? Did you increase sales? Did you get commendations from the customer? What was the result? And then you loop that back to your motive. How did it make you feel? I felt great when I resolved the challenges, because that is what I want to do. I want to solve problems and challenges, and that's what motivates me to find solutions, oftentimes very quickly. You tell that story, and you won't be able to time it, right? Press the timer, but you will be able to time it based on the engagement of the interviewers. What is their body language telling you? Have they checked out? Now, this doesn't always mean when someone recesses back in the chair that they're tired of you talking. It could mean that. It could also mean that you are the fourth interview of the day and they're just interviewed out. You might simply shift away from them, slight body language change, not a reaction. Even though it is a reaction, you're not overtly making a reaction, I better say it, and gesture to someone away from them and engage them, cause them to shift from that recess, make them recoil and respond back to you. And often when you move away from them and gesture to somebody else, they'll follow your gestures, and you slowly bring it back to them with a smile to re-engage them and again put them at ease. And if zest is one of your traits, then that enthusiasm and energy will seek, it will call unto, it will ask for some of their energy. And it may refuel and recharge someone who is a little bit worn and torn, if you will. Okay. So you want to pull back in those, your self-concept, and you want to pull back in those traits when you are responding in your actions and when you're coming to your results. Okay. Also in your results, you can infuse that knowledge and skill. I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to learn about decision making and been given empowered to make decisions in this organization. It's really grown me as an individual, and now I feel very comfortable making split-second decisions because of that opportunity that I was given. Put the knowledge and skill, align that with the results as a good part of the close. Of course, you're going to be revealing skill and knowledge in the task, but not so much where a person that's not in the industry wouldn't know. So you can't give them all of the skill if you worked at McDonald's. You might not tell them every, blue, green, white, red is how you layer the sandwich. I worked at a Wendy's. It was something like that many years ago. You might not give them that detail, right? Because they're not in that industry unless you're going to be a regional manager in a fast food organization, which is a great job, right? Great opportunity. But if you're using something from a different industry, you might not want to lock into the jargon of the industry as much as your knowledge and skill as applied in that industry is the point I'm trying to raise, if that makes any sense? I'm going to go back to the comments. Yes, enthusiasm is important. I am always, I'm a watcher of people, but I'm always fascinated by the energy that someone brings to a moment, right? Because if you're trying to control the frame, you need to bring self-concept, a strong self-concept, and you need to bring energy. I really believe that those will shift whatever has happened in the room before you got there or what is currently happening in the room. A way to pivot it is just a slight shift in your energy. Okay. Thank you for that, Andrea from New York. So I got other sample questions that I shared with them. And I think I shared that. So I'm gonna go back to the star for one more second. You're going to need, I think I said 5 to 7 of these is where you start. So you start developing 5 to 7 of these answers. And there are a whole slew of questions that I can share, that I will share. That you can have to start, and I'll send that to anyone who's interested in having it. That's a whole list of behavioral interview questions. I'm sharing it now. On decision-making and problem solving, these are some of the competencies. Leadership, which is an important one for you to study, even if you're not going into a leadership position, because a really savvy company is going to have questions among their list of questions on leadership competencies, because they want to see where you are and whether or not you would be a hire for tomorrow. So they could hire you today, but they have a role in mind for tomorrow, right? And so it would make good sense for them to assess your behaviors that might align with their leadership competency. And so there should be some questions in that behavioral-based interview relative to that. Career motivation could be one. If you have a lot of opportunities for people to move in an organization, or you don't have a lot of opportunities and you don't want someone who's going to come in and expect to move around quickly and a lot. These are questions that would help you determine that based on behavior. Of course, reviewing their job, their resume will tell you if they moved around a lot, but this might give you some insight into why, right? Of course, teamwork is a big one. Everybody wants people who can work on a team. And groupthink and collaboration. I just always tell people to be careful with raising this so big, making this such a priority without thinking about role clarity and agility and adaptability that might be important, especially in times of COVID. You're finding people having to perform cross-functionally, and sometimes the role clarity gets in the way. And sometimes people are frustrated when they don't have role clarity. So you have to make sure that you elevate that part of the competency and be able to assess, to hone in on that part of role clarity and agility and collaboration. Those are important parts of teamwork that you might want to raise more than others. Initiative is another one that's commonplace. Does the person need a lot of supervision? Do they take the reins and run with it in a positive way? Leaders are leading more from the edges and giving more power to individual contributors. And if that's what your organization does, then you want someone who takes initiative and doesn't have to have a prompting at every turn, or very little prompting at all, and even goes to be innovative to solve problems and just come to you for the appropriate permissions or barrier removals, right? Communication is always going to be big. And so whether it is being able to articulate your point, influence a customer, diffuse a situation with a vendor, do that in person, through Zoom, or in writing would be important to be able to do. Process improvement, change catalyst, and change management. We talked a little bit about that today, because the IT space, of course, is being turned on its head largely because there are a lot of software as a service opportunities, and a lot of that is changing as quickly as someone is integrating it into their organization, it's changing as they're integrating. So you got to constantly have process improvement continuously and constant change management, because everything is changing. As a matter of fact, it's almost as if the only thing that doesn't change is change. There's going to be change. Interpersonal skills important, relationship building important, adaptability to change. I talked a little bit about that, and flexibility, agility, time management is important, developing self and others, supervision. So all of these are competency questions for those areas. And I would say take one from each area and build, craft your response for one of these questions. And then, maybe once a month, you go through this exercise. Even if you're a passive candidate, even if you're not ready to move today, start building your bank of answers. And then after you built your bank of answers, set those aside for a second and think about the organizations that you want to apply for. Go to their websites, try to search for competencies, core values, and see if the questions that you've designed align. I would have done it the converse, but I don't want you to write questions just specific to an organization unless you already are applying to that organization. I want you to build your bank of inventory of these responses that you're going to use over time. And then as you move to be more an active candidate, you want to pull from that bank or develop questions more specifically. So the latter is kind of what I consider a little bit a laid back approach. I want you to have a little bit more proactive approach, that before you need the questions, you're building a bank of questions. And then when you need specific questions that are related to an organization specifically, that you start, I'm saying questions, but responses, that you start crafting and drafting those, and then set them aside. When I say set aside, let it sit for a day or 2 or 3 before you get to this next part. This next part is practice. So you got to almost memorize these stories. Don't make up stories. Make it your authentic stories, but memorize your stories and get you a partner, a person who can hear your responses to the question. And tell them to tell you about your body language. Tell them to tell you when you smile. Tell them to tell you when you seem most confident. Okay? And go back and revisit those things. And then ask them, though they won't necessarily be subject matter experts, but you ask them, could you tell from my response that this is my motive? And tell them your motive, that I like people. Did you hear that in my answer? Because that's what you want to hear. Now, it's even better if you have an HR professional who you can do this with, absolutely. And, I'd be open to doing it live here with you on LinkedIn Live and on the other platforms if you want to have the opportunity, or you want to get some exposure with it. I'd love to do it here. I could even, get a mock interview panel so that you would be able to, as a candidate, do some of this practice live. But that's basically what I would tell you, that you have to adopt a method. STAR method is great. CAR method is the same thing. It's, instead of situation and task, it's called the context or the challenge. So it encapsulates both the situation and task. And, very early on, years ago in personnel, human resources, before it became human resources officially named that, people talked about CAR, like building a car. I remember an example where I was sharing the CAR method with a gentleman. He was like, well, Mr. Holmes, if I built a car, I wouldn't start with the shell. I wouldn't start with the doors or any of the metal frame or any of the soft trim interior. I'd start with the engine. I'd start with what it would drive, and then I'd build around it. And I said, that's great. However you would do your building, however you would decide it, you have to have a structure to it. But like building a car, okay, we need these materials. You're going to tell me when, what, and who, right? You got to tell me what you're using to build it. What's the challenge? What's the situation? What were the tasks associated? Okay, to build the car, you need screws, you need tools, you need metal, you need various things to build it, right? And so then once you get those things, how do you build it? What actions and steps do you take? And what were the results? You had a car that customers wanted to buy. You had a car that you were proud of. You had a car that was eco-friendly. You had a car that, took into account the environment, whatever the impact is, right? So that's building the car, or the STAR method. But you got to do your homework first, learning the company's job descriptions, learning their core values, their core competencies. You also definitely have to get your accomplishment record together of the things that you believe that you have accomplished, the projects that you've worked on, and any benefits from those projects, commendations, kudos, awards, rewards, any performance evaluations or reviews that said, hey, you do great in this competency or great in this area. And ones that say you don't do as well in this area or this competency, you might go to those competencies and develop questions first so that you build up your self-concept. Because see, going into an interview, you have got to believe that this organization deserves to have you at this table. As valuable and powerful and healthy and profitable as an organization are, you have to have the self-concept that you are the same, that these are two parties bringing together for an agreement where they both would benefit. So the company would do well to have you, as well as you would do to be able to be extended an offer from the company. And so you got to work at that self-concept to ensure that that is your belief, because if it's not your belief, it will be the representative that's presented at an interview instead of your authentic self. And believe it or not, the organization wants to know who you are. It's 12:58, and as I go to the close of this Passion Friday, I'm very passionate about all things human resources. In the question, tell me about yourself, which is what we kind of started with, right? You can find a way to tell them about you without telling them necessarily your very personal details. So you do want to steer away from very personal details. Some people say in this world and environment, people are opening up and they're more flexible to the information you share. I always caution with that because people are assessing you through the lenses of how they have assessed themselves. And that is what bias is. And there are conscious and unconscious bias that you must be aware of. So if you're a single mom and you say, I'm a single mom who just wants to have a great career for my kids, someone who has a bias, whatever that bias is around single mothers, that bias could shut them, if they're not careful, down from hearing anything that you have to offer in an interview and cause them to rate you lower. If you said, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, now that seems pretty harmless, but if the interviewer happens to hate the Dallas Cowboys and that's his rival team, you have no way of knowing that. But it could trigger that bias, and it could have a horns effect or overshadow in a negative way your interview opportunity and thus your opportunity for a position. You might do well to say, I'm a sports enthusiast, love all kinds of sports. And I love it because it's teamwork. And I love being part of a team because I love the people. I love working with great people. I'm very people oriented. See, I told you something personal about me without going too personally, without saying I love baseball because my dad loved baseball and we watched the Detroit Tigers when I was growing up. I didn't offer that much information, but I told you I'm a sports enthusiast, whatever that should mean for me. Now, someone may delve and say, oh, who's your favorite team? Say, well, I got several favorites depending on the sport, but I'm from Detroit, so I'm always going to stand up for my Detroit teams because I have grit. And I believe once you get into something, you stick with it until the very end and do your best to help it succeed. You're already revealing who you are. One of your traits is grit. So you interweave the personal things that are important to you, aligning them, interweaving them with professional things that are important to you. Okay. I love music. It's something about the rhythm and the instruments collaborating together that reminds me how important collaboration is and how much I love it in organizations. I love to be able to meet people across division throughout the organization and find ways to make our processes better. And so over the years, I've done this in the way of collaboration because that's been very important to me. I interwove my love for music in that. So you're telling people something about your personal while interweaving it. I'm a native Detroiter, and I really believe in Detroit and its comeback story. And I know it personally because I've come back from different universities, but I never gave up. Had the opportunities to work in this opportunity, this one. This one didn't work, so I pivoted here and I was able to grow and be promoted and develop. And here I am today seeking a better opportunity, a person that comes back and always moves forward, just like my city. I told you about my love for Detroit, but I weaved it into my opportunities and the things that I've gleaned from them. Important to do that so that people get to know who you are in the interview, because that's really what they want to know. They get to know who you are, but you use your motives, you use competency characteristics to craft your responses so that they both know who you are and they know the behaviors that you possess are the ones that they want for this position. I'm so grateful that you joined us for this hour. It's 102, a little beyond the hour. I hope you don't mind that. If you'd like this information, you can email me at mgrmarcus@hrpassion.com. You can inbox me on any of the platforms that you see with your email address, and I will email you the PowerPoint presentation that I shared this morning with Perscolis, and I'll be happy to share it with you. Have a grateful Friday. It's Passion Friday. What are you passionate about? And what are you doing today about your passion? Have a great one. I'm just going to check the comments before we sign off. Thank you, Tina Gibson. I hope to share more often on Passion Fridays. Share this widely. And again, if you like the information, inbox me on any of these platforms, and I'll be happy to email it to you. Have a grateful Friday and grateful weekend.